Hey, hey, hey. So, like we said, we're going to be doing a lot more streaming, like daily streaming, for a while. So, some will be short, some will be long, maybe only 5 minutes. Today's, I don't think it's going to be that long. I am wearing the same thing I wore last night. I showered late last night, so don't judge me. I'm not a slob. I just showered at night, and I wanted to get this in before I showered for today because it's New Year's Eve. So I'm going to be doing exciting quarantine New Year's stuff, which is staying home and fielding New Year's calls and chilling with the wife. So yeah, how's everyone doing today? Yeah, MF Doom is dead, man. MF Doom is dead. MF Doom is dead. I can't believe it. 2020 down to the wire is just sucking. I mean, part of me is hoping it's not true. So part of me is thinking you know, just wait and it'll be a false alarm, but it's never been a false alarm yet. When it's gone viral, yeah, 49, he's dead. I can't believe it. I haven't even found out the reason yet. Probably should have waited, but I was like, oh, it just kind of spurred me out of inaction. Um, yeah, a lot of people are saying his wife announced that he's dead on social media. So, um, she did it from his social media account. So she tweeted, not tweeted, I think it's Instagram from MF Doom Instagram. Begin all things by giving thanks to the all. Actually, let me put it on the screen. I think that would be better. So wait, this is weird. It says he transitioned October 31st. So apparently he's been dead for a while. He didn't just pass. This is weird. Yeah. Oh God, please tell me that this is not true because I would hate to misunderstand this because now this is someone's pointing out that is this misunderstanding? Uh Begin all things by giving thanks to the all, to the meal, the greatest husband, father, teacher, student, business partner, lover, and friend I could ever ask for. Thank you for all the things you have shown, taught, and given to me, our children, and our family. Thank you for teaching me how to forgive beings and give another chance, not to be so quick to judge and write off. Thank you for showing how not to be afraid to love and be the best person I could ever be. My world will never be the same without you. Words will never express what you and Malachi mean to me. I love both and adore you always. May they all continue to bless you, our family, and the planet. All my love, Jasmine. Transitioned October 31st, 2020. The October 31st, 2020 thing is confusing me. So now I don't know what that part means. I don't know. I have no idea, but I was a big fan of MF Doom, even from his KMD days, like when he with Zev Love, Sub Rock, Zev Love X, and who was the member of KMD that died? Sub Sub Rock. Sub Rock was the one that died. Zev Love X is the one that used to be that MF Doom used to be. Um, Doom lost his 14-year-old son a couple of years ago as well, so that's pretty tragic. MF Doom lost his 14-year-old son, I think, in 2017 at the end of the year, and then he, lost Sub Rock, his DJ, his brother, his bandmate back when he was in KMD. They did the song Gas Face with Third Base. Then they did Peach Fuzz when they got their own group album. But they also had a really good second album that was very underrated. It was banned because it was so controversial, the cover and everything, but they went really radical and hard. Um Onyx, Onyx the Birchstone Kid. That was the third member of AMD. Sorry, I forgot his name. Yeah, but they were five percenters, and their follow-up album was called Black Bastards. You can find it on Spotify. And they were a little bit kind of twee on their first album, and kind of De La Soulish as far as being high concept on their first album, Mr. Hood. But they Black Bastards was a really good album, and it got released retroactively. It was It was released after the death of, Sub Rock X, and he died while they were, still working on the album, so the album's, like, pretty dark, and I think it led to them getting dropped off Elektra. It got very mixed reviews because a lot of people, uh Elektra shelved the project. I don't think they ever released it, but later it got, released by MF Doom's own Metal Face Records label. I think it also got released by someone else a couple years earlier. But yeah, I don't think Elektra themselves ever released it. Um, but I think right now it's on Spotify. It's it came out in 2001, even though it was recorded in 1993. And I remember at the time people wanted to hear the album, and I think the source might have even done a review on it at the time, but it got shelved. It never ended up coming out until 2001, but it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I recommend people find it and stuff. But yeah, so he was in the game for a long time, and he's had many manifestations. I hope it's not true, but we'll see. Oh, so that was Bobito's label. I didn't know that. Yeah, 5% rap I think is kind of dead. I mean, gentrified New York. I mean, everything in New York's dead. New York, a lot of things in New York are dead. Yeah, Peach Fuzz is a great song. Oof, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of weird because I was gonna talk about something else. Right before then, this I saw this right before I started. So now it feels kind of almost silly to talk about it, but at the same time, I don't really have anything else to really weigh in on about Zev Lover X slash MF Grimm dying. So um his real name was Daniel Dumille. I actually never knew that. Is he Haitian? The last name Dumille is no, no, it doesn't seem like he is. Yeah, the name Daniel Dumille sound like could have been. Yeah, but I don't know if anyone else has any info on that. I'd be curious, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's all pretty crazy. That's a hell of a. I was thinking to myself too, like we have one last day left in 2020. What's it gonna give us? And yeah, the day is not even done yet. I would not be surprised if we find out something else. Yeah. Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. So I think of what I even want to talk about now. What I was going to talk about, and not to trivialize, the death, but just because I feel like I don't really have much else to weigh in about it. There was some stuff about the movie Soul that the more I thought about it, I wanted to add some extra thoughts because it kind of really annoyed me. In the way that it kind of, I hated that it was very much a white movie that just threw a black guy in it, you know? Um, and it's very much a white person's worldview and it defaults to a white person's view. Um, because it doesn't, because of just the whole way it looks at eternal questions, and the way it kind of formulates the afterlife and purpose and all this stuff. And what really jumped out at me about it, and I don't think it's a minor thing, but it's a fundamental understanding of black people. Like, black people very much don't view heaven that way. um Black people very much don't view religion that way. Like, I think the difference between how black people and white people view religion and God is very much the difference between how black people and white people view parents, nature, and family. Like, just about every black person has a story when they first saw a white person tell their parents that they hate them and how aghast they were when they first experienced it. Like, it wasn't until I went to college and had to like really live among white people that I really ever even learned that it was possible to curse your parents out or say you hate them. And I remember that was one of the biggest pieces of culture shock in college me and all my black friends had. But there's always this kind of thing where it's like, F you, dad, I hate you, mom, and all this stuff, while the parents are doing all this stuff for you. And I th- I've long posited that that's very much how, if God is the father and nature is the mother, hence Mother Nature. Um, White people's relationship to the concept of God and the concept of nature is very much the same as their concepts to the relationships to the real mothers and fathers. For the MF Doom stuff, for the MF Doom stuff, I'm not really going on about it because there's no information to really add. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get Kenny and some other people who are into music, and we can have like an actual MF Doom retrospective where we talk about our favorite career highlights and stuff. But outside of the announcement, I'm just going to lay off of it unless someone in the chat has something to add to it. As far as finding out news, put it in the chat, and I'll you know throw it out there. But so it's like, but the other thing I noticed too is that white people have this thing where they cannot talk to family for years, including even like parents, but still when somebody dies, they swoop back in for the house or the um inheritance. There's still this sense of entitlement that they can get, like where there's no real problem with putting the parents in a nursing home or having a lot of bitter feelings toward them, but there's still the entitlement and expectation that you're going to take care of me, where with black people it's kind of the opposite, where we are very deferential to elders and just respect old people because they're old and have a sense of loyalty to older people and family. But at the same time, we expect we're supposed to take care of them or defer our needs to theirs or not really expect anything. Like, um if our parents don't leave us anything because they were still taking care of their own needs, we don't really question it. We don't really question it that much. um yeah, just self-centeredness. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that for me growing up. Is someone saying the MF Doom thing is fake news? Keep me posted. I would like to know. Yeah, anyone can give me. We'll keep returning to it as the stream goes on, as news comes on. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, maybe this is true that white families, especially middle class and up, seem to have superficial bonds that mainly have to do with wealth protections and transactions. I can't fully say. I don't know, but I mean, I think there is some kind of truth to that to a degree, as in, there is a kind of detached thing that happens with the warmth and everything. But I also think it's a class thing because if you look at like blue collar Italians and different types of blue collar or what they call spicy whites, I noticed they have a different thing. A lot of times white is conflated with waspness in this country. And for example, like there's a movie called The Pope of Greenwich Village. And there is this Sicilian American Mickey Rourke character dating waspy Daryl Hannah. And I was surprised the extent to which the Sicilian American character and his family relations and the loyalty to family and friends was very different than the wasp that Daryl Hannah's um relations and views of things, and the extent to which the Sicilian blue collar culture was I identify with it a lot more, than the wasp one, and she couldn't understand why he didn't just cut off his annoying friend, who was played by, I think it was Eric Roberts, and he had to explain to her, we're not wasp. We don't do that. We don't just cut off people the minute they get inconvenient. And I feel like Soul was very much like that. Like Heaven was just very cold and bureaucratic, but there was a kind of disrespect for the institution of it. Like white people tend to view nature and God as something to be conquered and surpassed, which I think is kind of very much how they view, their parents. Like you very much want to slay the father. Like I think that's why the Oedipal myth is very, very powerful in white culture, and it resonates so much with Western culture. The idea of wanting to get out of the father's shadow and slay the father, even as you're proud of the lineage and expect them to take care of you. So you can say, I hate you, mom. I wish you were dead, dad, and all this stuff. But because it's a culture of domination and an ethos of cutthroatness, it almost becomes a way to express love, which is why it doesn't really get you disowned or hated, or why they still get insulted or hurt when, despite this type of contentious relationship, they don't get to inherit what they were supposed to inherit. Um, like being pragmatic and competitive and dominating and playing to win is like a lot of their love language. So that's why putting them in a home is not taken personal, or being gone for like, or distant for like decades before they died is not really considered grounds to disown, because in a way I think they almost get proud that they raised a winner. Like he's such a winner, he will even throw me under the bus to a degree. And there was a lot. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the entire paradigm of reason seeks to replace God with the white mind, and post. That's the whole post Enlightenment view of whiteness. Like white people weren't even like this the whole time, really. But from the time of Descartes and the idea of I think therefore I am, and the idea of mind body division. That's why therapy is so big in the Western white world, because they have so overemphasized their mind and have so enforced a mind body division and created this idea that they um exist or are real or are valid based on how rational they are, and that you can rationalize your way through everything, that they have created a very strong mind body divide and an overdeveloped sense of rationality and a worship of rationality that supersedes everything, to the point that they're very, very divorced from their emotional and spiritual side. That's one reason why they kind of fetishize non-white people, but particularly black people, because they stereotype us as the least intellectual and least rational. Therefore, they implicitly believe that we must be the ones most in touch with our emotional and spiritual side, and that they can relearn that through us, because we don't have all that pesky intelligence and rationality um, blocking our connection to the otherworldly. So all of this is very, soul is shot through with this, like, very much. And someone in Discord today made explicit a point that I didn't make explicit enough, and that I think I didn't actually crystallize enough until I read what he said, and I thought it made a good point. What he said was Kamaria on the Discord said, I think the idea of being back on Earth as a quote unquote prize for doing good is based in the European Asili. And if you read Yurugu, Yurugu, it's a very good book, but it goes deeper into like the white mind versus the black mind, and the white ethos versus the black ethos, at least the European versus the African ethos. Asili is from that book, right? It's by Dr. Marine B. Annie. But Kamaria says, I think the idea of being back on Earth as a quote unquote prize for doing good is based in the European Asili. When Dr. Annie talks about time and the Europeans' intellectualization of everything, um, due to having a fear of linear time and obsession with death because of a lack of connection to ancestral time or afterlife. So Marimbi Annie talks about time and how Europeans intellectualize everything because they have a fear of linear time and obsession with death because of a lack of connection to ancestral time or afterlife. So they would see going back to Earth as a prize, when for a lot of black people, I think they'd honestly choose to be with their ancestors or the creator. And I think that's very true. And that's why Europeans used the Bible or Christianity as an excuse to dominate everyone. They interpreted the Bible in ways that justified manifest destiny, whereas religion was given to the African slaves as a way to make them be able to cope with suffering in the here and now. So it's like, wow, you suffer in this earth, but you will be able to find the promised land in the afterlife. Like the promised land was the afterlife. When Obama named his book The Promised Land, he was tying into an African American tradition by naming it that. But the Promised Land is very different in the black conception of Judeo-Christian values than it is in the original Jewish perception of Israel and a homeland. The Promised Land is to the black mind the afterlife. So it's a very white idea. I could think it doesn't understand black spirituality at all. It's just a white movie, and the black guy is just a token. He could have been easily or should have been a white Pixar character. Uh, they had no sense of black sensibility or black views of things, you know. And Kamaria continues. Um, white people fear the afterlife to a greater extent because it's a place they don't have dominion over. And then someone Discord added this comment. They said, and maybe not only that they don't have dominion over the afterlife, but that there's no known or feasible way to have dominion. So it's a world of equality, and there's no way to have status or stunt on anybody or dominate anyone. And on Earth, they have a pretty sweet gig. To a degree, the afterlife is kind of a step down to them. But for a black person, is it really? You know, um, like there is that instinct to preserve life, but I just feel like being more driven to go back to Earth than any other person on the treadmill. So you have a bunch of white people happily, blissfully going to Earth, and this black person, first off, bucking the rules like that, and the idea that I can buck the rules, I can outsmart nature, I can outsmart God, I can outsmart the system if I'm just clever and defiant enough. I just don't really, it doesn't really feel like an authentically black worldview, because we kind of um defer to ancestry and wisdom and nature and the cycle of things much more easily than white people do. Like when white people see something, their first in nature, the first thing is to figure out how to harness it. Like if you look for God knows how many years, the Bolivians and other South Americans had the coca leaf, um, and they just had it forever, and they did not do anything crazy with it. They just picked the leaf and chewed it every day for a burst of energy for generations, and whatever. When white people saw it, they just couldn't leave well enough alone. They were like, if it's this good and this strong, what happens if we put it in a lab? Like, let's dominate it. Let's dominate this piece of nature and exploit it. And if a little bit of something is a good thing, then a whole lot more of it has got to be even better. So let's find the part of it that is powerful, that dominates. Let's extract everything else, isolate that, make it 1,000 times more concentrated, try to patent it, try to market it. Can we make money off of it? Can we dominate people to get it? And now we've had this worldwide drug trade that in several decades, in less than a century, has destroyed like whole swaths of the world, killed a whole generation of uh black Americans. Yeah, so yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, so yeah, it's really the mass production logics of yeah, so it was just very weird. But that's that white individualism. That's that white conquering, defying the rules, um defying tradition mindset. That's why it just didn't ring true to me. The movie Soul in any way, you know? Um like the value, it just didn't have black values to it, to me, especially if it's about spirituality. They just retrofitted a black person, the superficial optics of this is what blackness is to, I feel, the white mind. It's suffering, it's um being it's suffering, it's melanin and West African features. That's the second thing. The third thing is being treated bad by white people, and the fourth thing is superficial culture and swag. And this movie had three out of the four. It didn't have the at least not overtly mistreatment by white people, but he had like the suffering and everything, and he had the melanin and the features. I mean, they made him look very black. His nose was really wide, his lips were really big. Like they really made him look blackety black. And he played jazz. He had all like the markers of blackness. Um, so he had the barbershop, he had jazz, he had the lineup. Like they did their homework on the superficials. And so it was what a lot of people reduce blackness to in the here and now. And yeah, that's how people view blackness, but that's especially how people view Black Americanness. That's why people are the most hostile to Black Americans trying to self-define, because that generic four element view of blackness, um, that four element view of blackness allows for a flat blackness that anyone can jump in and out of, and, and yeah, and because this was about Black American lead, and it was very Black American because it was jazz at the center of it. It very much had that kind of flat blackness, but it missed everything that makes um blackness more, the deeper versions. Like if you look at the book Yorugu by Dr. Marimba Ani, and we're going to cover it at some point, you'll really see what it is that you know I'm talking about. So to give another example, and this is the problem with just having two white guys write something and then bring on a third guy who's black just to cover the superficial aspects, right? um Jared Haggard, you missed the part about him dying in October, but yeah, we already asked that, and none of us know either. We don't know why they're only announcing it now, but he was always a private person, so maybe it ties into that. This is a cultural iceberg, and I think it really is a great way to see how blackness is viewed in America. But the cultural iceberg is this thing created by Edward T. Hall, I believe, and maybe fine-tuned by some other people. But the cultural iceberg says, let me pull it up real quick. The cultural iceberg, there's surface culture and then there's deep culture. And the surface culture is food, language, flags, festival, fashion, holiday, music, performance, dance, arts and crafts, literature, and games. And soul basically reduced blackness to the above surface culture part. And unfortunately, a lot of even black people have a tendency to do that, especially with American blackness, because being that Black Americans um, are almost a country within a country. They don't really have their own homelands. It's really easy to convince yourself that Black Americans don't have a culture, even though I believe they have as much of a culture as everyone else. But because they are the Black people who have been least allowed to self-define, thanks to being a minority in their own country and not really being in charge of their own country, it's very much easier to convince yourselves that Black Americans only have the surface culture part and not the deep culture part, that is the part of the iceberg under the water. And like a real iceberg, with real icebergs, the tip of the iceberg that's above water is actually a very small part of the iceberg. A vast majority of the water of the iceberg is actually what's under the water and unseen. And it's the same with culture. Surface culture is what tourists and new immigrants and stuff like that see, but the deep culture is the high context, is what Edward T. Hall called the high context culture, as opposed to the low context culture, the stuff that you don't need a lot of context to be able to do plug and play, to jump in and out. Now, um, I think people, it's much easier to see Jamaicans, Nigerians, Haitians, Caribbeans in general, Africans in general, because they have their own self-defined country and culture, as having deep culture, and then people dismiss the idea of Black Americans having the deep culture, which is why not only do white people lecture Black Americans about how they have no right to reject Obama or Kamala Harris as one of their own, because to them, they see Kamala Harris dancing, they see Barack Obama celebrating the music, they see Barack Obama having swag, playing basketball, they see him as melanated, you know, um, they see him shout out the holidays or the fashion. They see her um, performing with the marching band at and going to Howard. They see them as having the surface culture, and to them, Black American is nothing but the surface culture. So what's the problem? Whereas with a Jamaican, they might expect them to have the deep culture. And examples of deep culture are conceptions of self, con- concepts of time, concepts of past and future, concept of roles related to age, sex, class, family, fairness, concepts of fairness, concepts of justice, attitudes toward elders. That was an example of what I was talking about, how white people have a different idea of how they treat their elders, attitudes toward adolescence, dependence, rules, expectations, attitude towards authority. And that's another example. Like, this black guy did not have a reference for authority or his ancestors or his elders or whatever. Attitudes toward death, toward age, toward sins, approaches to religion, approaches to spirituality, notions of modesty. Yeah, this thing had none of that to me. Yeah, totally. They have no stream of history or capacity of self determination. I think this is a deep question. I wonder if we, meaning Black Americans, convince ourselves of a lack of deep culture, or if we just don't want to think about it due to what is so clearly tied to. And Ed said this a couple of days ago in Clubhouse when they were having one of those ADOS versus diaspora debates. And I was saying, and in a strange way, one of the reasons why Black immigrants or second generation Black Americans get really invested in the idea of flat blackness or Black Americanness being only surface culture, as much as white people do, is if you take someone like me who's of Haitian American descent, and I was born in America. I was not born in Haiti, and I have lived my whole life in America. I've been to Haiti like once, and that was a long time ago. My Creole is terrible. If you force me, I can speak Creole, but Creole Lou and Bushmer, I don't speak. The Creole is heavy in my mouth. It doesn't sound right. Um, People like me, despite when you see all these Black immigrant descendants, like second generation, first generation Americans, always putting the flag in their bio. Part of that is because, in a way, and this is something that I think a lot of Black Americans and ADOS people don't really appreciate. In a way, they kind of have it worse than Black Americans, because what happens is this: they're not even part of really the surface culture or the deep culture of their parents' countries, but they're also not really part of the deep culture of the American. Like, for example, Black Americans, they do actually have the deep culture of the Black American culture, even if it's unconscious. Like, they don't really appreciate that they have it, and a lot of Black Americans unfortunately buy into what B. Scott is talking about here, about convincing themselves of a lack of deep culture. You do have it, you're just unconscious of it. But for children of immigrants, if flat blackness isn't a thing, if Black Americans actually have a deep culture and not just a surface culture, then children of immigrants are double fucked, because they can't connect to what's happening in their parents' country, but they're also never truly going to be part of blackness in America either. So in a way, ironically, they're more orphaned. Like, for example, Black Americans are arguably more culturally orphaned than um, Jamaicans or Haitians or Nigerians in their home countries, because you know Jamaicans, Nigerians, and Americans in the home country have a homeland. They have the opportunity to self-define. They have conscious access to a deep culture, and they don't have the same level of imposed definition from an oppressor class the way Black Americans do, because the colonial presence has not been there for a while, and even when they were colonies, they didn't have as many white people there all the time, constantly reminding them that they were otherized, right? But after you become an immigrant and have kids here, the kids end up worse than both the parents in the home country of Jamaica or Haiti, Nigeria, and worse than the blacks of the host country, because they're not connected to anything. They're not connected to the surface and deep culture of where their parents are from. And if Black Americans are allowed to have a deep culture, they're not connected to that either. And it's kind of doubly tragic. Yeah, people coming from the islands of Haiti, Jamaica, and have a native culture of their own, same as Black Americans do. But do their kids have real access to that? Especially if they can't really speak the home language when they visit. Like, I remember when I was growing up, uh, and my parents were Haitian. A lot of people who have immigrant parents have this thing they go through where they feel like different than the American kids, and that they'll be embarrassed about their parents sometimes when their parents come to school, and maybe how their parents dress or talk or whatever. That's something a lot of immigrant kids have. And I remember I felt super kind of otherized growing up, because my family was Haitian, not Black American. But when I traveled to Haiti, I realized I did not fit in there at all. And they treated me like I was American. And I realized I'm more American than I really am Haitian. I don't have anything. I don't fit in here at all. Like, they look at me as more American than Americans look at me as Haitian, you know? So I think I think all that combines to form this thing where, in addition to white people having an investment in American blackness being flat, foreign descended Black people end up developing, for different reasons, psychological investment in American. And yeah, I would agree with this too. Einstein Impel said, I would argue that ADOS culture is the core American culture. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's a very true. I think it's a very true thing. I think it was even touched on by Tocqueville, Democracy in America. But um, there was a social theorist that was talking about America and talking about how white Americans are the blackest white people in the West, and the idea of that was the extent to which Black culture informs what white culture is. It's a very interesting theory. I wish I remembered where it was from. Like, yeah, but anyway, I think soul really plays into the idea of flat blackness. It feels kind of sterile. It feels spiritually sterile, and it is just corporate, bureaucratic, European view of the metaphysical in it. And I think it has very much a celebration of flat blackness, and it cannot understand. That's why it couldn't have a second Black character, because I think a prolonged Black conversation, like if 22 was Black, the writers would not know how to get that deep. Because if you had to write two Black people interacting, you'd have to get an understanding of the deeper culture. And by having 90% of the Black person's interactions be with a white woman, it allows the Black flatness to be maintained, because interracial conversations in general don't go beyond the flat blackness. Neely Fuller says that white and black interactions never tend to go beyond the four T's, which is tacky, trashy. Um, I say it's three T's: tacky, trashy, and terroristic. You know, like so yeah, it's it was really, yeah. So the thing with soul, right, is that I think it's just gets stuck on that level, and what it was just a basic white fantasy of heaven and earth and the afterlife and whatever. Like the extent to his communications with black people, what was the communications with the black people? It was the barbershop, and he didn't really have much of any connection with his barber. The white woman asked the barber all the questions, and he just went in there and got his haircut. Like the black barbershop was, it was accurate superficial surface culture, but there was no ability to intimate the deeper aspects and the um deep culture of the barbershop. The mother was just basically Moynihan report stuff. What did we get about black life from his interactions with his mother? That black women rule the home, are the breadwinners. Black men are dreamers who can't provide, and that she never had faith in the black son's ability to provide for himself or be able to live his dream, because she says you didn't have a woman in your life the way your father did to run things. You know, it's a very very outsider white view what they think black family dynamics are. Because you ever notice how white people think of black women versus black men? They very much buy into the idea of the black man as a child who's ruled by, you know, his woman in the matriarchy. It was very much tied to that. So yeah, um, somebody shared when in the Discord when describing soul, that soul reminded them of this onion article, and I thought it was very apt. But this onion article said, heaven less opulent than Vatican reports disappointed Pope. And they tweeted, I mean, they wrote this in 2005 when John Paul died. That he went to heaven. He was disappointed by how less opulent it was than the Vatican. The soul of Pope John Paul, which entered heaven last week following a long illness, expressed confusion and disappointment Saturday upon learning that celestial kingdom of God, to which the departed faithful ascend in the afterlife, is significantly less luxurious than the Vatican's papal palace, in which the Pope spent the past 26 years of his earthly life. Where are the marble statues, sterling silver chalices, and gem encrusted scepters? The visibly disappointed Pope asked. Where are the 60-foot tall stained glass windows and hand painted cupolas? Where are the elaborately outfitted ranks of Swiss guards? Why isn't every surface gilded? This is my eternal reward. And I think that article is very right, that joke article, but I think it left out, like, where are the people to be better than? Where are the people to subjugate and dominate? Where is my white privilege? Where is my white superiority? You know? So I wasn't really impressed with the movie. It was a cute movie. I wish just made everybody white, or had it done by actual black people who have a tie into black people and make everyone black. Like, I don't see why 22 couldn't be. Well, I see why, because they weren't equipped to write the deep cultural cues that would be required to have an all black movie, because they can't really relate to black people on a deeper level. And this was really for white people by white people. Yeah, so it was okay. It was very overrated though. I didn't really, yeah, blacks in the US are JG. I can't read all his comments because I'm like looking up stuff, but JG's and Ice on Info dropping some great comments in the chat. Uh yeah, well, I wouldn't say just the Irish. I would say the Scots Irish. I would say the two cultures that really have a big um states are the Scots Irish and black people. And I think Gangs in New York touched on it for a second, but they didn't do a great job. But a lot of things that are uniquely American culture are where Scots Irish and the African meet. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting yeah. The Onion didn't take the racial angle, but they included class when the Pope talked about nobody kissing his ring. Yeah, so there was a talk of the need for dominion. Yeah, and that was the undercurrent of soul, which made it very inauthentic to me. That's not how black people viewed of metaphysical or the afterlife. It just wasn't ringing true to me. It wasn't interesting to me. It And I feel like a lot of the black people who really just blindly enjoyed soul, I think to a large degree probably don't really, by necessity or whatever, had to acclimate themselves to white culture enough that they didn't really see anything off about it either, because they tend to be black people for whatever reason have internalized a flat picture of blackness as well. So as long as there was a melanated person in there and he had the superficial stuff right, jazz and all this stuff, then and barbershops and a bad view of black men, that was enough for them. Yeah. So this is last thing I want to say. I found this article because there were three writers, and I always get very interested when there's multiple writers, how the development happened and what different writers did. Because I'm like, this movie is so white. But I found out one of the writers was black, and I bet you the black writer was brought on as an afterthought to just fill in the blanks on the surface part cultural of the cultural iceberg, that he was just more an afterthought, right? So there's an article in Forbes, soul writer Mike Jones talks art, animation, and the meaning of life. And I was like, let's see if Mike Jones is white. And sure enough, this is Mike Jones. This is who they're interviewing about the movie Soul. And so he says, I spoke. So he goes, film was written by Pete Docter, Kemp Powers, and Mike Jones. I spoke with Mike about Pixar's storytelling process, the journey from screenplay to screen, and the lessons learned along the way. And this guy looks like he would be one of those. He's a Google employee to me, basically. Where did the idea for Soul come from? Is the first question. And for people who are wondering who Pete Docter is, right? I should put this up next. This is Pete Docter. Before we go further, this is what Pete Docter looks like. You can see, and yeah, so that's Pete Docter, and who Pete Docter is Chief Creative Officer of Pixar, and I find that just really interesting. Chief Creative Officer. They even make being creative sound like corporate speak. They reduce something such as creativity to sounding like a boardroom position, chief creative officer. That alone says so much about the culture that this movie came from, right? So The guy that I just showed you, Mike Jones, chief creative officer, and this guy, senior story and creative artist, like, so the most corporatization of the creative process and hollowing out of the soul of creativity names for a job, and two of the whitest people were who this started with. The black person was not in there on the ground floor. Where did the idea of for soul come from? Pete Docter had an idea set in a place beyond space and time where souls are given their personality. He was always kind of blown away by the fact that his son, as soon as he was born, seemed to have come with a personality already in him. He wondered, where did that come from? I mean, that reeks of genetic determinism to me. We had a setting, so we needed characters to really drive that plot, that in their actions really drive the story. That's the kind of Pixar's big motivating force in all their stories, that the character is creating a story rather than the story happening to the character. But these people are two unreflectively white guys, unreflectively corporate minded white guys, and they were not able to distance themselves from their own white corporate culture to even try to think about what type of character, like what internal biases am I bringing to the story of what this character is going to get out of the afterlife. So this is what they come up with without even thinking about this is how black person thinks. We came up with the story of a soul who doesn't want to die, who meets a soul who doesn't want to live, and in their interactions, together they end up convincing each other what it means to live a fulfilled life. But I feel like the soul who doesn't want to die had a white person's reasons for not wanting to die, or a white person's energy behind it. Once we hit upon that, that was our North Star for the 4+ years we worked on it. So the 4+ years is mostly these two white guys, chief creative officer. I take it over that job, and chief story executive, artist, whatever the jobs were. Um, they said, I can't tell you of any Pixar movie that started as one thing and ended up staying the same. They always change. And Joe Gardner, the sole protagonist, was originally a Broadway star who died right before his big break. But ultimately, we decided that that wasn't really in line with what we wanted to say. As soon as we thought about making him a jazz musician, it really opened it up. The idea of infusing the movie with jazz just felt so immediately right, So they thought, they didn't even think of a really a black person so much as what part of flat black culture would make this work. And so jazz was really more forced than actual black humanity or black people. So once we hit upon that, that was our, you know, North Star. We had a bunch of different reasons. But they go forward. And mind you, um, the thing that I'm wondering is, where does a black guy come into it? So the black guy, I believe, I think the third guy is black, and that's Kemp Powers. So Kemp Powers is a black screenwriter. This is Kemp Powers. If you want to see who he is. So this is Kemp Powers. He's a black guy, and they have a picture of him here with the Pixar people. He's taking a picture with them, right, and all this stuff. But Kemp Powers does not seem to be an actual Pixar employee like the first two. Kemp Powers is a screenwriter and a playwright, so he's more a hired gun. He writes all over the place. He's a journeyman. So this is totally formulated by two Pixar employees, two corporate employees, and you can see in how they view heaven as just a giant corporation and bureaucracy, and bean counting and approval of projects and making sure, and a giant human resources department, It's very much a tech company. It's very much a HR department. It's very much a bureaucracy. It's very much a corporate bottom line driven place. That's and if you see who formulated the world, you can see what a metaphysical was that. So then why did they bring Pete Doctor in? This kind of freelance hired gun, right? What was his job in it? That's what I wanted to find out. And I felt like it would give me a better understanding of the movie. So, I go in there and back to the interview. They said that a lot of the visuals came from the artist, but let's find Pete. I want to find Pete's. Sorry, Pete is not the black guy. Sorry. Um, what's the black guy's name again? Kemp Powers. Okay, sorry. So the black guy there was Kemp Powers. So there was I can't find it. Yeah, from this article, I'm not really sure exactly what brought to it or why he was needed. But my take on it is I have a feeling they use Kemp to add some authenticity to the jazz and the barbershop stuff and to fill in the surface level like elements that they need. They kind of just casually mention Kemp in this, but they don't really go into what he really brought into this. The more I look at this article, um, I can always do that later because there's going to be a lot of streaming in the next couple of months. So here we go. I found something. Kemp Powers brings his expertise to Soul. So here's a coverage. The last article was Mike Jones and Pete Doctor's contribution to the screenplay. So here's one about Kemp Powers. He's a black guy. I'm reading this in real time for the first time. So in 2016, director Pete Doctor and producer Dana Mary needed help fleshing out their latest movie. And I swear to God, I didn't read this before. But so far, this first sentence is already confirming what I thought it was. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, this is really interesting. So, check this out. The animated feature, oh my God, I can't believe I'm reading this. The animated feature about a New York music teacher and aspiring jazz musician who falls to his death just after being offered his dream gig lacked a certain soulfulness. Oh my God. So Doctor and Murray flew one night in Miami playwright Kemp Powers up to Emeryville and showed him a very rough cut of what would eventually become Soul, now playing on Disney Plus. So they were up to the point they already had a full rough cut, and it was nothing but white people working on this, and they were just like, this doesn't feel black enough. Stick your ass out. Like Hollywood Shuffle. Like they just needed somebody to just um, be the script doctor of blackness, basically. And I saw it as something that had this incredible power as a film, but it just wasn't quite there yet, says Powers, who offered valuable feedback and was quickly brought on as a writer and co-director. So they pretty much had fleshed out the whole plot, movie, ethos, approach, and everything, just the white corporate people, and then just brought in this black script fixer. As a fellow middle-aged, so they just brought in for his identity. As a fellow middle-aged Brooklynite and jazz aficionado, Powers, 47, was able to bring credibility to the character of Joe Gardner, voiced by Jamie Foxx, as he journeys from the streets of New York to the underground soul forming of the great before. So think about how the coverage of the white guy was and all his creative process and everything. And then the coverage of this guy is just about his authentic surface level blackness. And that's basically it. Not his deep conceptualization of anything. But, you know, he was brought on because he felt blackity black enough. But also, who's judging how black this guy is? It's not other black people. It's basically these two corporate white people probably. I would love to know what the diversity levels of the Pixar office even are in the first place. The fact that they could even find an in-house person to lend the credibility, I think, says a lot about the people, about Pixar, and what it must be like for two senior people at Pixar to be writing this movie about blackness. Um, so the writer began the process by asking himself some basic question: who are Gardner's family members and friends? What does he do? What authentically black spaces is he going to pass through over the course of his journey? And it's just weird that a black person would say that were the questions he asked himself, because to do that, you kind of almost otherizing yourselves. Like, I'm sure when Martin Lawrence was doing input and creating Martin, he wasn't asking, what authentically black stuff can I do? What authentically stuff? He was just like, hey, what's a cool thing to do? What's a doing thing, whatever. And because he had an authentic sense of blackness, and wasn't writing for the white gaze, the stuff was automatically authentically black because he was just trying to write a day in the life of a certain type of person. Yeah. So yeah. Sorry about for the people still asking about MF Doom, but we don't know that much, so I can't really you know, say anything, unfortunately, about that. Yeah. But we're gonna do follow-ups when more information comes back. So to get some of the businesses that Gardner visits down, the film's story artists, animators, and set designers visited local tailor shops and barber shops in Oakland, Berkeley, Alameda, and Emeryville. And they did get that stuff superficially right. I will give them that. You know, I will give them that. Um, so he's the one who wrote One Night in Miami, the movie that we talked about in this podcast that has the British Malcolm X, who sounds nothing like Malcolm X. He sounds like Obama, the British actor playing Malcolm X. So it's kind of interesting that he's brought on for authenticity, and he worked on a movie where none of the Black American icons, after it was all said and done and casted and got its studio notes, were authentic at all. You know, so yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, he's final paragraph says, I'm very busy, says Powers, who is already hard at work on two unannounced projects for Barack and Michelle Obama's Higher Ground Productions and Phil Lord and Chris Miller's production company, adding, let's put it that way. So basically, the projects he's working on after doing the inauthentic One Night in Miami movie that a lot of people complained didn't really feel like authentic Black Americanness. He's working on a project for Barack and Michelle Obama's production company and for Phil Lord and Chris Miller's production company. I wonder, like, if he's being brought on to be to add authentic blackness to Lord and Miller's project and whatever they're doing. Who knows? But the guy's being brought on to add authentic blackness, but the catch-22 of it is the people judging the authentic blackness are people who know nothing about blackness themselves, so they end up going with who makes them comfortable, and maybe that person is not that would be like if the only Kardashian I knew, I was rich, and the only Kardashians I knew were, sorry, the only Armenians I knew were the Kardashians, and I was trying to interview people to teach me about authentic Armenianness, and I end up hiring a Kardashian. Like, you don't. I feel like sometimes you have to be of the thing to be. It's kind of like the paradox of you have to get experience, um, to get a job, but you need a job to get experience. Like, you have to have someone black to give authenticity, but you need to be black to properly judge another black person's authenticity. So what happens is these white execs end up in these catch 22s where they're hiring black people for authenticity, but they don't have the authenticity needed to judge how authentic the black people's contributions are. And it's a hard cycle to break, just like it's hard to break the experience versus job cycle. So yeah, Pixar, I'm really wondering how diverse the Pixar office is. I'm gonna try to look that up now. I got a feeling it's not very. When I look at diversity in Pixar, most of the results that come up in the Google search I'm doing are about diversity in its work and how diverse their characters are. It's actually pretty hard to find people talking about actual diversity in the Pixar office itself. And that kind of shows what commentary and politics has been reduced to in America life, where the optics of something are more important than, the actual behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, I can't really find anything with race and diversity. I'm trying to find if anyone's given them a report card. Uh, but when I look it up, all I see is people talking about how many of their characters are black or Mexican or whatever, but not enough about what their actual diversity of their offices. So people talk about Coco and Soul and all that stuff, but I can't find anything about their workplace diversity, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't know. I found that they actually did a short on workplace diversity, apparently. And when I look up Pixar diversity, I saw that they had a Asian thing called Bao, a Mexican thing called Coco, and a black thing called Soul, but I cannot find what their actual breakdown of black employees are. Yeah, so who knows? But yeah, I was not very I was okay. Here's the only thing I found so far. The only thing I found tackling how diverse Pixar's office are is this article that says brown Muslim woman, my experience of systemic racism and sexism at Pixar. Where, she talks about how bad Pixar was for her as a brown employee, a brown female employee. And now people didn't want to hear anything about Black Lives Matter and all the microaggressions that she suffered. Yeah, so I mean, there's that. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I could find, but I still can't find anything. Do they have a diversity officer? Someone asked. Yeah, I'm just very disappointed about how pleased so many black people are by this movie. That I think is so clearly just written by white corporate people, and with the blackness thrown in as an afterthought or window dressing. Um, you know, yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the articles I keep finding is stuff like this. With Soul, Pixar aims to affirm its commitment to diversity in film, but I haven't found anything really about the commitment to diversity in The Office. But not just that, I feel like a lot of people don't really seem to care about it. Um, but yeah, they do apparently have a inclusion department. Um, Here's what I found out. Yo, someone just found it too. David Gonzalez found it in the chat. They have a VP of inclusion strategies. So Britta Wilson named Pixar's VP of inclusion strategies in 2016. So they have hired somebody to take care of that. So they must have a department. Pixar has tapped Expedia. Trapped was a Freudian slip, but maybe it accidentally works. God, I hate these websites. These websites are so loaded with spam and spyware and stuff that it takes forever to load the site up. But here we go. Pixar has tapped Expedia executive Britta Wilson to serve as the studio's newly created vice president of inclusion strategies. Also, she's the top person it seems. Effective October 17, Wilson will lead um, Pixar's efforts to develop and nurture an inclusive workforce. So, only since 2016 have they even had someone in charge of this, and I've not been able to find out what her track record has been and what the state of it has been. Yeah, so yeah, I can. In 2015, um, no, that's the same thing. Diversity in films, not about the workplace. Here's another article. Pixar and Disney Animation will work really hard to be more diverse. But again, they're talking about on the screen, the optics. This article, yeah, so there's very little reporting or question I can even find about what the actual behind the scenes real life commitment is. Almost everything when I try to search it is about the literally white people behind the scenes creating diverse window dressing. And no one even really seems to be pressed to even ask them about I don't know what this means. U block origin. I have no idea what this means. Um, yeah, so and these people rarely have hiring power. Yeah, she reports to white people, but yeah, I think that's basically all they really think about is representation. That's all it comes down to. Behind the scenes, they're all white, and it shows with this product where it's basically created by two people to me who have like a Silicon Valley corporate Fortune 500 mindset, writing blackness to the point where they're able to have a rough cut in the movie ready. Then, as an afterthought, talking about themselves and saying, you know what, this movie's lacking something. Oh, black input. Oh, great. Well, we have no one inside to give the black input, so let's hire the guy who's recently seems to have gotten a lot of jobs writing blackety black stuff. Yeah, so you're black, right? You're middle aged. You like jazz? Oh, good enough. Blacken up the movie, guy. That's good enough. Yeah, so interesting. The IMDb trivia for Soul is cringy. Kemp started on a 12-week contract. They got other black celebrities to sign off slash add their name to the press packet. So yeah, all the blackness is kind of retroactively added superficially. Tina Fey wrote a lot of her lines. That makes a lot of sense because the character was very annoying. Um, oh yeah, I have a ad blocker, but what problem is when you put the ad blocker on, then the websites keep you from being able to view them. So it's kind of annoying. Yeah. So anyway, that's basically that. I'm sorry this wasn't more about the death of MF Doom, but unfortunately I still haven't found a lot of info about it. I'm looking it up right now and it's still speculating on the same social media post that says he died in October. I hope we can figure it out some. But yeah, anyway, the usual house cleaning. Um if you enjoy what we bring to the table, as always, consider doing a super chat donation in the chat section on the side. You just hit the dollar sign. You hit the dollar sign and it connects to your Google Pay. And you know, you can give us a tip. We reinvest everything into the show. It goes into all these cool little things that we create to make the show look and sound better in the streaming. I wanted to next thing get a standalone camera so we can do kind of like what Jamal Thomas does and other people where it looks really really nice. I want to get a standalone camera and not the webcam. So yeah, everything helps. But also you can, if you don't have Google Pay, you don't like Google having that information for you, you don't want to hit the super chat, use Google Pay. You can do PayPal, champagnesharks@gmail.com. But you can also Venmo or Cash App at Champagne Sharks if you want to donate like that. We always appreciate it. Or you can go to this PayPal website. So yeah, in review, Champagne Sharks at Gmail for the PayPal address, or you can pay us at Venmo or Cash App, at Champagne Sharks. And yeah, I want to read some comments before I go. Oh yeah, thanks, R. Salisbury, much appreciated. R.I.P. MF Doom. Oh, also join patreon.com/champagne sharks, because if you do, you can join the Discord. Yeah, so for $5 a month or $54 a year, 10% discount, you can join the Patreon, and also we'll give you an invite to Clubhouse so you can chop it up with us over there at the weekly meeting that we have over there. Yeah, so yeah, you get a bunch of benefits and bonuses for only $5 a month, like 16 cents a day, or $54 a year, which is even less per day if you join us over there. So happy New Year, everyone. Just want to read some more comments before we go because I haven't had a chance. I haven't had a chance to read the comments because I've been looking up stuff, and you guys always give good comments. So a lot of RIP MF Dooms. How do you get the Clubhouse invite? You have to become a patron. If you're already a patron, you have to be in the Discord because we have a paid forward system where what happens is people in the Discord, once they get invited, they save an invite for other people in the Discord, and we paid forward like that. So if you have not figured out, if you're a patron and haven't figured out how to get into the Discord, um, email us at champagnesharks@gmail.com or DM us on Patreon, and we'll um, walk you through it. But you have to be a Patreon member. Any other good? Probably have a VIP of inclusion strategy in the Biden administration. Oh yeah, I'm sure they do. Ironically, they already have creating a job for white conservative outreach, which they've done first, which I find really really funny. Um, lot of MF Doom shout outs, unfortunately. Um, Colonel Kulva Gaddafi, as usual, derailing the conversation in weird places. That's funny. They made it a black character because only melanated people have souls. That's funny. Um, this is interesting. Has anyone read this? I have not read FBI's. Oh wow, interesting. It's called FBI's. It's a book subtitled "How J. Edgar Hoover's Ghost Readers Framed African American Culture." Wow, that sounds great. I hope this author is still alive. I would love to read. Mm. Oh, this is a description of the book. Few institutions seem more opposed than African American literature and J. Edgar Hoover's white bread FBI. But behind the scenes, the FBI's hostility to black protest was energized by fear of and respect for black writing. Drawing on nearly 14,000 pages of newly released FBI files, FBI's exposes the Bureau's intimate policing of 5 decades of African American poems, plays, essays, and novels. Starting in 1919, year one of Harlem's Renaissance and Hoover's career at the Bureau, secretive FBI ghost readers monitor the latest developments in African American arts and letters. By the time of Hoover's death in 1972, these ghostwriters knew enough to simulate a sinister black literature of their own. The official aim of the Bureau's close reading was to anticipate political unrest. Yet, as William J. Maxwell reveals, FBI surveillance came to influence the creative and public reception of African American literature in the 20th century. That is really interesting. And I have a feeling that the marriage between the corporate world and the governmental world probably blurs the line now, where a lot of what's discussed in FBI's, much like the internet went from mainly a government institution to a corporate one. I have a feeling that what is being described in FBI's corporations probably do a lot of that now. Not to suppress blackness by force, but to um, dilute it with frivolity. I feel like what the FBI used to do in this book, FBI's corporations now do in things like Soul, but for a different reason, to encourage mindlessness and capitalism and corporate outlook to the world. It's kind of like how when the government created what came to become the internet, they were creating it with a very 1984 mindset. But by the time the internet ended up in corporate hands, it had a very brave new world culture of frivolity mindset to it. I feel like governments create a George Orwell 1984 world where corporations very much create a brave new world overflow of inanity type of mindset. But as government becomes more corporatized, governments start developing the same agenda. Very interesting stuff. Thank you for that. Um, any other good comments? Yeah. Someone said the guy looks like a Pixar character. The guy, Pete Doctor. It's very true. I thought the same thing. He does look like. This is a great point. Let them keep their empty propaganda. We should have our own infrastructure to tell our own stories and control our own imagination. Yeah, but unfortunately, I think a lot of these black people who end up um, having the leisure time and training to be creatives are the ones who are most into the idea of being included in white stories and white structures and getting a seat at the table. Unfortunately, I feel like life is so hard and grinding and oppressive and expensive that a lot of the black people with this mindset just don't have the ability to, or leisure time or luxury to, or means to create these structures or create these spaces, unfortunately. Yeah, I think this would be a great book club book, for sure. Yeah, multiple people said that. Champagne Communista, thank you for the donation. Happy New Year to all the Champagne Sharks and the listeners. Stay safe out there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but this is important. Please, people, join the Discord. We have a lot of. You can talk to other Champagne Sharks fans, but also to the host. And we have a book club night and a movie night. And you have to become a patron to do that. So patreon.com/Champagne Sharks. And if you're already a monthly patron, let me encourage you to consider becoming a annual patron. You get a discount, and it really helps the show out a lot. So, thanks everybody. Happy New Year. Our daily streams are going to continue going into the new year. So, look forward to seeing us tomorrow for a stream of the year. Like if you haven't liked already. Comment, subscribe, but most importantly, share. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers in 2021. So we're only at 2,000 right now. So if you watch this as your first video and you like it, subscribe to the channel. and send these videos to your friends. If you have people who liked Soul or disliked Soul or whatever, you want to give them some thought-provoking content, send them this and encourage them to subscribe. We really want to get the subscriber count up on YouTube big time. All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year. Love all of y'all. Appreciate all of y'all. Be good.